And a very happy Wednesday to you at 12:08 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, for the second day in a row, the staffers at LA City Hall have not picked up on that this is not a real name.
Before the next speaker comes up, I'd like to call last few names: Jaden Canalian, Kelly Chan, Samuel Avedano, Sean Yu, Stacy Segura, Mike Smo, and Sarah.
Was that Imelda Padilla?
No, that was just one of the city attorney staffers that reads the names.
She appears to have no idea that that was a prank.
Stacy Segura, Mike Smo, and Sarah.
And no one bats an eye, which makes it even funnier.
I can't wait to see if they can get this going on Friday for a third meeting in a row.
When did LA City Hall become Moe's Tavern for prank calls?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Amanda Hugginkiss signs up on Friday.
There's only one way to find out. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. I know that we've had various experts on this program that have spoken about the fires here in Los Angeles and the city's response to the fires. One of the questions I've asked many of them is, do you think LA Mayor Karen Bass is going to survive this story? And the answers have varied based on who I've asked the question to. However, I will say this. After waking up this morning and looking at social media and looking at her most recent interview with Fox 11's Alex Michelson, I am going to go on the record right now and say this woman's career is over.
Oh, wow.
I think it's done. I think the fat lady singing, turn out the lights, the party's over, put a bow on it, she's finished.
You think the bass is cooked?
The bass is definitely cooked. So if you want to see the mayor, head to Long John Silver.
Oh, you're so optimistic.
Here are a couple of doozies, and then we're going to play the sound for you that she dropped on the public earlier this morning, or I guess the interview was taped sometime yesterday. She now says it's going to take 5 years to rebuild. If your home burned down in Pacific Palisades, it doesn't matter what she said when the president was here. It doesn't matter that she said she's going to move heaven and earth to move this along as quickly as possible. Those initial estimates that people received whose homes burned down of 3 to 5 years is now her official position again. 5 years is the length of time it's going to take to rebuild these homes. Meaning, if you live in the Pacific Palisades and your home burned down in the fire, the Olympics will come and go before you're allowed to go back. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people, including the President of the United States. She also said that she wants to launch an investigation as to why she went to Ghana instead of sticking around Los Angeles and dealing with the fires.
Wait. She's investigating why she went to Ghana?
She wants an investigation as to why she went to Ghana instead of sticking around to guide the city through the fires.
No!
That might be one of the most insane things I've ever heard.
I have tried to understand what she was trying to say all morning, and I can't figure it out.
She believes, well, at least she is now telling Alex in this interview that they've only posted a few clips of. The full interview is going to be on The Issue Is on Friday. She is saying that nobody told her how bad the wind was going to be.
Okay. Listen, lady, I don't receive any information that's proprietary from anyone at the Weather Service, the Weather Channel, Al Roker, Dallas Raines, Sam Champion, any of those people. But I was aware that we had heavy-duty winds and we had extreme fire risk. And I'm not the mayor. And I didn't even live in the city of Los Angeles. Because you know why? I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, Mayor. Just me and you here. Because sometimes it's important to have the ability to crack code. Sometimes these life hacks, they can really help you out. And sometimes, if you know where to look, you can be ahead of the game. Are you ready? If you wanted to know that it was going to be windy that week in an extreme sort of way, all you had to do was watch the weather report on the news. Now, that's between me and you. You don't need to go blabbing to other people. Loose lips sink ships. Now, I know it could be hard to find, so let me tell you where to find it. You can do it at Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 11, Channel 13, and get this, if you have one of those cable boxes, there's a channel that's devoted to nothing but the weather.
Not only that, you know how much she loves We Never Ask a Tough Question KNX? They do traffic and weather together on the 5s.
They do. And let's just say that for whatever reason, you're not feeling the television or the radio. I know you have a phone because I've read the text messages between you and Lindsay Horvath because they were in the paper this morning. So all you have to do is whip out your handy-dandy iPhone, and there's an entire app that's devoted to nothing but the weather. That's it. There's also a thing called the Farmer's Almanac. Not quite as reliable as the handy-dandy iPhone, or as any of the channels I've just mentioned to you. But if that's your pleasure, go ahead. I love it when people act as if something was a secret that was obvious to everyone around them.
Even our low-budget-ass radio station, we had the news reports about the weather and the wind and the fire danger every half hour.
People who didn't even live in this state were calling me and asking me about it before it actually hit. I have a friend in Florida who does nothing but watch the Weather Channel. Sandy. She likes to call me early in the morning because she knows I wake up early. She called me days before the fire started to ask how the wind was. Yet, according to the mayor of Los Angeles, this was some kind of hidden secret that only the fire department knew about, and they didn't share it with her. When you drive around certain parts of town, don't you see those signs with Smokey the Bear where it tells you what kind of fire risk you're facing today? And they change it day to day based on the risk? Couldn't she have just driven by Smokey the Bear to figure out what she was dealing with? No. Here's what happened. She was told that it was going to be windy. She was told that there is extreme fire risk. But she wanted to go to Ghana because she wanted to be the belle of the ball.
She wanted to party.
That's right. She wanted to be the toast of the town at an inauguration on a totally different continent. Because after all, dealing with fires, that's hard work. Going to a cocktail party and sipping on some scotch and taking pictures with other people, that's easy. Anyone can do that. I can do that. But no, that's not what she did. She went to Ghana instead of sticking around and doing her job. And now she wants some kind of blue ribbon panel to investigate.
And she's trying as hard as she can to throw the fire chief under the bus now, saying the fire chief didn't warn her how bad it would be.
What was the fire chief supposed to do? Call her up and say, hey, turn on the television? there might be some information that's useful to you? I mean, seriously. What is the fire department obligated to do? Shouldn't the weather be the most obvious thing in the world?
In every single municipality except Los Angeles, the buck stops with the mayor. In Los Angeles, the buck does not stop with Karen Bass.
Let's say you're given the job to investigate this whole scandal. What is it that you would do as an investigator? You know, you can go back and look at old copies of the Los Angeles Times. They talk about it. I guess if someone TiVo'd some of those news reports, you can go back and look at them again. But what is there to investigate? And how can you go on television and say that with a straight face and think that you're helping your cause?
Yeah, weren't these interviews supposed to be damage control?
You know, I'm beginning to think. I always thought that she was a savvy politician because she's been around a long time and she was a nice person. I'm beginning to think that she's as dumb as a box of rocks.
Oh, you're so optimistic.
Because you can't go on TV and say that with a straight face and expect anyone to take you seriously. I want to investigate as to why I was in Ghana instead of Los Angeles. I guess she thinks it looks like she's demanding answers. She's demanding action. And didn't she just say that going to Ghana was a huge mistake? Wasn't that part of the news cycle yesterday?
Yes, it was.
And now she wants an investigation. So what was it? Did you make a mistake? Or is it some kind of scandal that people set you up?
It's almost like she got tricked into going to Ghana. She threw the Biden administration under the bus for that, too, saying, well, Biden asked me to go.
You know what this reminds me of? You know that she and Nancy Pelosi are good friends. Remember when everything in California was shut down and none of us were allowed to go to the beauty parlor to get our hair cut? And Nancy Pelosi was at the beauty parlor and it was all caught on tape and it ended up on the news.
Karen, why are you doing this?
When she was asked about it, she said it was some kind of setup.
That's what Karen Bass is doing right now.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Kevin, listening online in North Carolina, writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, for God's sake, you could have turned on Fox 13 here in Durham and known huge winds were coming to L.A.
He just spilled the beans, too. How did everyone know but her? All right. If you want to listen to the podcast edition of this program, maybe catch an episode from last week if you were out of town, Randy, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. Heck, you can hear Karen Bass's greatest hits.
If you're feeling down, if you're feeling blue, let's get help for you.
Oh, and by the way, Johnny, I have to put this out there because we did get a question during the break. If anybody is confused about what the name is being uttered at the LA City Council meeting that we have to bleep,
Stacy Segura, Mike Smo, and Sarah.
you can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and I'll tell you.
That's just one of those things that's between us. Too vulgar for the ear.
It's so good, though.
But not vulgar enough for the LA City Council meeting.
They just haven't gotten it yet.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
790 KABC welcomes Dierks Bentley, the Broken Branches Tour, featuring Zach Top, the band Lula at the Inuit Dome on June 26. Tickets are on sale next Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
My friend Emily just texted me and said, Mother Goose's goose is cooked.
It's not a namsy-pamsy thing.
L.A. Mayor Karen Bass now says it's going to take 5 years to rebuild if your home burned down in the fire. She's also demanding an investigation as to why Karen Bass went to Ghana instead of sticking around in Los Angeles to guide the city through the fire.
We need to investigate why I did something incredibly stupid.
Well, too bad that Andy Griffith is dead, because this is something for Matlock.
Let's hear what Karen Bass had to say to Alex Michelson. These are only some of the clips of this interview that's going to air on Friday on The Issue Is on Fox 11 and on KTVU Fox 2.
Only on Fox 11 tonight, 43 days after the Palisades fire broke out, the L.A. mayor is sitting down for her first in-depth TV interview to talk about it with us.
I felt absolutely terrible not being...
Boy, as soon as she got into real trouble, she started doing the shang all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think it's a nervous tick when you know it's just bad news that you're delivering.
Yep.
I felt absolutely terrible not being here for my city.
L.A. Mayor Karen Bass gives us her first sit-down TV interview since the Palisades fire began, and opens up about traveling on a diplomatic mission to Ghana with dangerous winds in L.A.'s forecast.
When I say it was a mistake, absolutely.
Again.
And by the way, let's just say it's 75 and sunny. What business do you have going to Ghana on a diplomatic mission? You're not the Secretary of State. You're not the American ambassador to Ghana. You're not the American ambassador to the United Nations. You're not the vice president. That's not your job.
When I say it was a mistake, absolutely. The idea that I was not present was very painful.
We know.
By the way, that should be emphasized. She was not present literally, and she was also not present figuratively because she didn't give a crap about what her job is.
No, and she claims, well, I had my cell phone in Ghana. I had my cell phone on the airplane, so I was in charge the whole time. We didn't skip a beat.
We know that there was warnings about the weather before you went, and you still went. What was the thought process behind going to Ghana?
When the White House called and asked me if I would represent...
Oh, now she's throwing Biden under the bus.
Well, that's easy to do. He has no clue she's doing it.
So let's get the timeline here, because now she's claiming Biden calls her, says, I need you to go to Ghana, represent the country. Isn't that what the vice president is supposed to do? But Kamala was checked out after losing the election and spent a month in Hawaii.
Okay, so I just read that autobiography that Nancy Pelosi wrote. And in her book, she talks about how she would use the carrot and the stick to get people to do what she wanted them to do. And one of the carrots that she would throw out to members, if they were good boys and girls, is that she would allow them to go on these international junkets. She would make sure that they had a ticket on the airplane. She would make sure that they were given official capacity to be there. She doled those out like they were presents, like they were lollipops to her members, so that they would behave. They would do what she wanted them to do. It's not as if Joe Biden called her up and said, you know, we got a serious diplomatic situation. You're the only one qualified to do it, so we're going to need you to step up and get on that plane and go to Ghana. No. What this was some kind of payback for some favor that she did for him before. This was a plum that he gave her. This was something that she wanted to do. This is something that she asked for. This is something that she made very clear to the administration that she was interested in doing. And on his way out the door, he gave her a gift because he owed her something. That's what this is.
Well, and how dare you call it a diplomatic mission? It was a party. It was
a
literally
cocktail party.
She had a red dress on and she was sipping.
What was the thought process behind going to Ghana?
When the White House called and asked me if I would represent the president, I said yes. It was going to be a very, very short trip, over a weekend and 2 business days.
The mayor says LA Fire Chief.
That's a pretty long trip for a mayor.
Yeah, that's what, 4 days? Unless you count Friday as a weekend. If you're counting Friday as the weekend and 2 business days, you're talking about 5 days. If you're not counting Friday, it's 4 days.
Isn't this the same mayor that as soon as she got into office declared a state of emergency on homelessness?
Oh, yes, but it's not enough of an emergency to keep her in town.
The mayor says LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley did not call her to warn her in advance of the trip and didn't do the, quote, normal preparations for this kind of wind event.
Bus meet Crowley. Crowley meet Bus.
Whoa! She is throwing that woman right in front of that MTA bus.
This is revenge for Kristen Crowley getting pressed on Fox 11 with Gina Silva that the city failed the fire department.
Oh, what's coming up next? She's going to say, well, maybe that fire chief was drunk, and that's the reason she didn't tell me. I know she's a big fan of that lesbianic tonic.
That type of preparation didn't happen. If that had...
Aren't you the person in charge?
Yeah, you're at the top of the food chain, lady.
That type of preparation...
Catastrophic winds that everybody but Karen Bass knew about, and apparently she is now blaming the fire chief for not preparing in advance.
What was the fire chief supposed to do? Charades? Where she stands next to her and just blows?
That type of preparation didn't happen. If that had, I will tell you, Alex, I wouldn't have even gone to San Diego.
Oh, come on. What do you think? We were born yesterday? And you know how you can tell we weren't born yesterday? Because those Lincoln Project guys haven't diddled us.
I had a feeling that was coming. So we're supposed to believe that the only reason she went to Ghana is she had no idea that there was going to be these winds. And everyone who was supposed to tell her failed.
If she's the only one in the city that had no idea that the winds were coming to Los Angeles, then she is declaring herself to be the village idiot.
She may be, in this interview, outranking Eric Garcetti as the dumbest mayor in Los Angeles history.
I give him the full face.
What does she think of us if she thinks we're going to believe this? How dumb does she think the people of Los Angeles are, where she thinks that if she goes out, this is going to borrow a phrase, put the fire out?
Nobody's going to buy this, and it is only going to reiterate what we all already believe. She knew there were going to be catastrophic winds, but did not care because she wanted to go to a party.
Whether she knows it or not, what she's doing right now is making it impossible for her political allies to defend her. Because let's say you're a surrogate, you're a supporter of Karen Bass when she runs for re-election. You are, Adam Schiff. And you're on one of the programs, one of the chat shows, and they ask you about the L.A. mayor's race, and they go, okay, the mayor said that she is demanding an investigation to find out why she went to Africa. That makes no sense. Can you explain why that makes sense to us? Do you think her allies want to be answering those questions?
Let alone leave the country.
But what do you mean there were warnings you weren't aware of? Because I know we were talking about it on the news. A lot of people were talking about the problems, warning that this was going to be a huge
So
thing.
it didn't reach that level to me.
My advisors never told me how bad it was going to be.
Not only were all of those channels that I've mentioned before talking about the wind, you want it in Spanish? They were doing it there too. How about in Korean? I'm sure if you went to the LA City Hall meetings, you could find someone singing about it in Chinese.
So I don't know how many buses we're going to need, but I think we need a whole fleet now because the fire chief is under the bus and every single one of her deputy mayors is under the bus.
I am really in shock at how dumb she must think we all are. Because if you go out and you peddle this and you think people are going to eat this up with a spoon, you really think that we're all remedial.
So it didn't reach that level to me to say something terrible could happen and maybe.
Even though everybody else knew.
And she said it didn't reach the level that she was at. So what, you're too good for the news?
She was too busy prepping for that party. She was probably with one of her friends picking out which outfit she was going to wear at the cocktail party, all set to the tune of Hall & Oates' You Make My Dreams Come True.
Oh, who had time to worry about the fires? Cinderella had a ball to attend.
This is getting worse every time she opens her mouth.
And maybe you shouldn't have gone on the trip.
Why didn't
But
it
to
happen?
me, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's one of the things we need to look at.
We need to investigate why I went to a party instead of doing my job.
Okay, who do you need to investigate it? Are you going to pay them 6 figures for 90 days too? Because if so, I volunteer.
There are now 2 investigations underway, one by LA's Fire Commission, another by the Fire Safety Research Institute.
Everything that happened, including that, needs to be examined.
Have you nothing to...
And of course, nobody needs to be fired over it,
Of course not.
especially not the mayor.
Well, she's going to fire the fire chief. That fire chief is done.
Have you nothing to say today?
When Bass returned from Ghana, she was ambushed by a Sky News reporter from Ireland. She didn't respond to him for several minutes, a clip that's been seen millions of times.
Your position?
Yes, it was an ambush, and I wasn't sure who he was.
Well, he had an accent.
Hit a microphone.
You knew he wasn't from Argentina.
How dare they ambush me and ask me why I wasn't doing my job?
I love the fact that a reporter asking questions to the mayor while the city is on fire is a quote-unquote ambush.
I got to know who advised her to do this interview.
Whoever it is gave her awful advice, and they should be the first one fired.
Because it's not like Alex is asking any gotcha questions here.
No, he's asking the basics.
Yes, it was an ambush, and I wasn't sure who he was. And that is unfortunate because I see the way that looks, as though I was avoiding. But when you're getting off a plane and you've been on a plane 17 hours and somebody hits you with a camera, I wish in hindsight my response had been better.
Yeah, no kidding.
This is not helping.
No. What's the old saying that the late, great Howard Bragman used to say all the time? Silence is gold and duct tape is silver. If this is what you're going to go out and peddle, just shut up.
This week, the LA Times quoted former fire officials saying that the fire department could have pre-deployed at least 10 additional engines to the Palisades.
Did the city fail the residents of the Palisades?
Yes.
That question requires a one-word answer.
Well, again, all of that has to be examined with experts.
What is a...
We got to have that panel checked everything out.
Why do you need an expert to investigate that? That's an easy question to answer.
Well, because if we just go with the simple answer, she has to admit fault here. If we investigate it, we can kick the can down the road a couple of years.
There was a big fire. You knew the winds were coming. You chose to skip town. The reservoir was empty. One of your departments didn't tell the relevant department, the fire department, that it was empty. There was no water in the fire hydrants. And you cut the fire department's budget, and they weren't deployed in the way that they should have been deployed to stop the fire, or at least mitigate the damage.
Well, look at what we learned last week, where the fire department had an outstanding list of 1,350 fire hydrants that needed to be fixed by DWP, and DWP says no.
How does that clueless woman that's running the DWP keep her job?
And she got a raise when Karen Bass appointed her and got approved by the city council. The starting pay for the head of DWP went from $375K a year to $750.
You know, there was a guy who was the governor of Louisiana. He was a very corrupt governor. His name was Edwin Edwards. And just when the corruption was hitting the newspapers, and it looked like he was not only going to lose re-election, but he was probably going to go to prison too. His opponent in the race ended up being David Duke, who at the time was the Grand Wizard of the KKK. Well, if you draw an opponent who is the Grand Wizard of the KKK, it doesn't matter how bad you are, you're not going to lose. And he made a very famous statement as he was heading into that election. And he said, they're not going to defeat me in this election unless they catch me with a dead girl or a live boy. And that's how everyone is behaving right now. Everyone in this city is behaving like they're bulletproof. Like there's no way they'll ever lose their job. There's no way they'll ever be held, to borrow a word, accountable for their actions, that they're entitled to these positions, they're entitled to their salaries, and no one has the ability to take it away from them. And it doesn't matter how bad they are at their job. They're going to keep the job because that job belongs to them.
Well, again, all of that has to be examined with experts.
What does accountability look like to you? And is it time that somebody be fired for this?
Well, again, I mean, I think it's premature to say now.
She's trying to figure out who exactly she can scapegoat.
Well, I mean, she's laying it out right now. It's going to be the fire chief. She is going to fire the fire chief, who was hired by Eric Garcetti. So it wasn't as if she hired the fire chief, so she has to acknowledge that she made a mistake. She's going to fire the fire chief and blame Garcetti.
But I do think that we have to examine everything, and that is going to take place very soon.
How do you assess the job performance of the chief of the fire department?
Well, I think that that's something that has to be assessed. I need to understand why things were handled differently this time than they've been handled before. I'm not.
Yeah, she is putting her on the chopping block right now.
Oh, that fire chief better start sending out her resume.
And why do you think that is?
I'm not sure.
We met up with...
No, the mayor has no answers for anything, and we're a month and a half into this now. When exactly is this investigation going to take place? Are we going to wait till all the rebuilding is done 5 years from now to figure out what happened? Because how many neighborhoods in L.A. were burned down in the next 5 years?
She's going to have to do what Gascon did. She's going to have to just avoid the press. She can't do any more interviews with Alex Michelson. She can't go on any forum that's going to ask her questions like this because it's just going to be crash and burn. She's going to have to stick to MSNBC and the liberal podcasts and just stay in that ecosystem. And who knows? Maybe in a city like Los Angeles where Democrats outnumber Republicans by wide margins, that'll be good enough. It wasn't for Gascon. Maybe it will be for her. But she can't continue to do these interviews with this kind of performance. She just can't. Let's go to Sam in Los Angeles. Sam, hello.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Good.
Okay. Look, I'm glad I got you. I got an article right here. It's from Sunday's L.A. Times in the opinion editorial section. Now, I noticed you, Randy, and everybody that's been piling on Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, whatever. I don't know if it's a personal thing. But anyway, let me read you a little bit right quick. Just a person went to school with Karen Bass. It says, "Stop piling on L.A.'s mayor. I am a former classmate of Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass at Alexander Hamilton High School. I do not see her as acting against the interests of residents." Now, it said it's one thing for a mayor to be away when rain can cause mudslides for homeowners in the burn areas. However, she would have to be a prophet to know that the forecast high winds and dryness would cause the destruction of Pacific Palisades and Altadena during her scheduled trip to Ghana as part of a delegation sent by then President Biden. What would the mayor's loud critics have done if they were in her shoes? It is easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. She came back to L.A. as soon as possible. Now, what is your comment on that, John? Now, based on this article, she wasn't even in the country when the fire started. So maybe you can enlighten me on that or whatever.
So she's acknowledged that going to Ghana was a mistake. So that is by her own admission.
Right.
She also said,
correct. Okay.
She also said that she was unaware of the winds and the fire risk, when in fact that was all over the local news for days and days and days. Not just the local news, but the national news.
Before she left, right?
Before she left. It was something that was all over the news. And now she's saying that word never got to her, and she wants an official investigation as to why nobody told her about the winds and the fire risk.
Oh, okay, John. All right. Now, would it be safe to say, I know you're going to get a chuckle out of this, so is it safe to say that Karen Bass is lying?
I think that might be a possibility. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it.